chapter 6. We'll be looking there in a moment.
A lot of times when I have sermon series, they kind of happen by accident. I don't often plan them out. I'll just start on a topic, and then I'll think, well, there's something else for me to talk about, and I'll do that the next week and the next week. But this time I'm going to start one kind of with some intention here. I'm looking at some of the spiritual anatomy that the Bible talks about. Because we are living in a material universe, and we contact things based on what our senses can perceive, all of our language and all of our experiences are limited to this world and how we can fathom and think about things given our limitations. I've said all that to say, a lot of the ways we talk about spiritual things have to do with relationships and metaphors between the spirit and the body. Parts of the body represent different things in the spiritual world, and indeed even the church is said to be Christ's body, with us all being individual members of that body with different roles to play. And so the first body part that I thought we could talk about in our spiritual anatomy series here is going to be the heart. Genesis chapter 6 has a couple of important distinctions to it, a couple of superlatives we can give it. It's the first time that the idea of the heart is mentioned in the scriptures. In the Old Testament, there are 576 mentions of the heart. The New Testament has 149, a much shorter section of the New Testament. That adds up, by the way, to 725 total mentions of the concept of the heart, at least in the New International Version of the Scriptures. And that also means that there are lots of places to look at how that is taught, applied, and the different meanings from different places. But I thought Genesis chapter 6 would be a good place to introduce us to the Hebrew concept of the heart, what it means in the language and in the idioms of the Old Testament, and how we can use that to learn what God wants us to know about Him and ultimately about ourselves. Well, the first thing I suppose I can tell you is what the word is in Hebrew. In Hebrew, the word for the heart
Is lev.
and that simply refers to the physical organ of the heart itself. But it also refers to the concept of the mind. So in the ancient Hebrew idiom, they didn't have a concept of the brain being the place where your thoughts take place, or your thinking activity, or anything else goes on. Now, this is not unusual. Many other cultures have similar ideas and divide up different parts of a person's mind between different body parts. And there are examples throughout the ancient world that even echo down to our history and our way
We speak about things.
metaphor today. But specifically in
This case, what we're looking at is the fact that the Hebrew heart, the heart in the Old Testament, sorry, everything just got way louder all of a sudden. The Hebrew heart is not simply just a place where feeling happens, but it's also the location of the intellect, the will, and the emotion like we might think of now. Now, if I tell you that someone was making decisions with their heart, nowadays you would think, oh, they were going off the impulses, their passions, the feelings that they had in the moment, their emotions. But if I told an ancient Hebrew that somebody was making a decision with their heart, they would think, well, yeah, of course, that's the only place you can make decisions from. That's where all of our thinking happens. So when the word heart shows up in the Old Testament, you don't necessarily want to be thinking feeling. It's also where your intellect, your will, your decision making, and even your determination. So what does the Bible say about the heart the first time it shows up? What does the heart look like the first time we read this phrase? Genesis chapter 6 and in verse 5. This is the point right before Noah's flood, when God is about to make a determination of what he's going to do with humanity. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. All right, there's your first use of the word heart. The human heart
is the first one that gets mentioned. And specifically, the wickedness
of the human heart.
Humans only think of evil things
all the time. That's
their entire purpose. Their
thoughts, their emotions, their will, the things they are determined to do,
their direction that they're going
is only evil all the time. Every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil. Certainly not a glowing
phrase here. In fact, it's a pretty strong indictment of the human condition up to this point. The people in
this
era of
the world
have become so corrupted and so vile that God generalized them as everybody in the whole world is
always evil all the time. Now, we're about to get into something interesting that takes place. And it kind of flies in the face of a lot of how people are comfortable thinking about God. But when we look at the actual language of the scripture, it's going to make a little bit more sense. So let me read you this verse, and I want you to hear the way it's phrased in English. Go ahead and get
unsettled by this. Let it make you uncomfortable so that we can figure out what it actually means. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. I read
probably a half a dozen different commentaries on this verse from 19th and 20th century commentators coming from the Protestant space, and at least one Catholic commentator talking about this. And they all are very disturbed by the idea of God being
regretful of anything. It very much bothers them. Let's think about why that might be.
Our Christian theology very strongly wants you to think of God as the all-knowing, all-powerful God who sees everything before it happens. He knows what's coming,
and so how could he possibly have any regrets? Okay. What is the Bible
really saying when it says God regretted that he had made human beings on the earth? Well, the word regret is not a bad translation, but our perception of the word regret might be a little bit off from the way that the Bible is applying it in this particular instance. Let's just pretend for a moment that we all have a teenager and we've decided to give the teenager the keys to the car, even though we know the teenager is not a reliable driver. Will you regret it when the kid crashes the car, even though you saw it coming? And the kid still had to go to work, go to school, whatever's going on, but we still had to hand over the keys. God handed over the keys to the world, knowing that people would have a tendency to make bad decisions. So he has regret. But more importantly, if we look at the Hebrew, we can get a deeper meaning from what's going on here. I already gave you one Hebrew word, that was lev, that means heart. So what feeling, what emotion, what thing was going on in God's heart when he regretted this decision? The word that's being used here, Naham, it specifically says, the Lord comforted himself because he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So, regret is a good word. I'm not saying we should have translated it differently. But if you're looking for another word, it's grief. The Lord grieved. And in his grief, he comforts himself. Oh, I've made up, this is paining me. I made this choice, and now the outcome has happened, and it hurts my feelings. It hurts me. So the Lord comforts himself. He grieves this decision that these people have made to become evil. But the important part about this word is not just what God is feeling, but what he does as a result. And let's get to that. Okay, so the Lord regretted that he made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race that I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Now the end of verse 7 and the beginning of verse 8 there has a pun in it you can't read. There's a play on words.
The word regret, the word God comforts himself here. I grieve that I have made
them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. For I made them. I'm not conjugating that in Hebrew, but I Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord.
Okay, the word that
Means
comforts himself
has the same root word in it as Noah's name.
Noah's name means comfort. So God regrets making evil people. He comforts himself over the wickedness of the world.
With Noah and his family. By the way,
The same word can mean to come
to rest,
or to
settle down. So when the ark settles on Mount Ararat, it Noah's. So
this whole section is Hebrew puns. And the
Bible's doing something really important with all of this language. First of all, it teaches us what the function of the heart is in the Hebrew Bible. God determined to make Adam and Eve in his image. He determined to punish them by throwing them out of the garden after their sin. And then he determines to punish their offspring because of their wickedness. And then he determines to comfort himself and to comfort the world by restoring it through the flood and through Noah. And then verse 8 says something really important. Again, what did I tell you? It's comfort. And so there's a double entendre. Verse 8 says, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. But comfort found favor in the eyes of the Lord. He's not just talking about man here. He's talking about the concept that the man represents, the concept the man is named for. But comfort found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Now, there's another body part there, eye. We'll get to that eventually when we do the rest of our spiritual anatomy here. But the point is that God perceived that comfort was good. And he made a determination to find comfort and relief from evil. Now let's go back to where this is all taking place. In the heart. Because if it was just about feelings, feelings are reactive, not proactive. If I make you mad, it's because I did something. If I make you happy, it's because I took care of something for you. I lifted your spirits, I made you feel better. If I make you sad, it's because I've taken something away that you're missing. All of our feelings are responses, they're reactions to things that come at us. But God is not just feeling here. He's proactively making a determination to do something. He is setting his will towards something. He is intellectually planning something. He His mind in its entirety is at work here. That's why I thought this passage was a perfect one to introduce the concept of the heart. Because we can see all the aspects of the Old Testament heart in play right here. By the way, where were all of those inclinations and thoughts, or inclinations of thoughts, residing in the human heart when the only evil all the time was taking place? It was the thoughts of the humans that were in the heart, not just the feelings, right? I don't think it's possible to have evil feelings, right? Again, like I said, feelings are a reaction. They're a thing that arises from a situation occurring. But you can have evil thoughts. You can have evil plans. If you feel happy, you just feel happy. Feel sad, you just feel sad. That's a reaction to the world around you. So the heart can have something deeper. Also, we can learn something about the nature of the Lord here. Even if you don't think regret means God changed his mind, right? God didn't start out thinking one thing, then realize God was wrong and do something else, right? But God felt bad because of the things that he already knew had to happen. And because of that, we can learn something about the mind and the heart of God. Number one, God does have feelings. Now, you might take this for granted, but that's the problem. We don't take it for granted. We need it to be said. We need explicit things. If it's not in the Bible, it's not true, right? God has feelings. He felt bad, and then he felt comfort. He felt relief from that bad feeling. He took action based on his thoughts. He made proactive choices and didn't simply just react to the situation. Now, there's a final thing I want to make a point about that before we get to our actual conclusion. A lot of the ways that the gods of the Canaanites were perceived and the way that the worship of the Canaanite gods around the people of the Hebrew people was done was based on how does God feel in this moment, and how can I change his feelings so he'll be more inclined to be on my side? Well, Paul's in a bad mood because we had no rain for the last month, and I needed to rain on my crops. So let's get Paul in a good mood by offering some sacrifices. Well, we're not having any luck having more kids. I need more help around the farm. So let's go up to the Asherah and offer another sacrifice to the fertility goddess and hope she smiles on us. Get her in a good mood, and things will work out for us. But that's not how the God of the Bible operates. He's not Baal. He's not Asherah. You don't have to trick him into being on your side. He communicates. He delivers messages. He talks to people and sets his will and his thoughts out in the scriptures. If you want to know what God thinks about something, here you go. Read it. Find out. You don't have to mysteriously probe around and try and guess at his moods, because he's not driven by emotion, but by intellect and will as well. He is not purely a being of whim, but he has some personhood to him beyond that. Something greater than we have, in fact. So we've seen two hearts in this passage. We saw the hearts of people, and then we see the heart of God and his holiness and his purity. So what's the lesson for us? Well, first of all, don't be like the wicked people. And second of all, be like the Lord. Make sure your heart is determined to do the right thing.
your heart
on seeking good. Set your will on doing good. Make your plans and your intellect aligned with doing good. And then the feelings that will also be good. You will find comfort like the Lord did. Our lesson here today is a bit of a short one, but I wanted to do a little bit of a word study on this passage so that we could enlighten this and really start ourselves down a path of talking about this. The last thing I'll say on this topic today is actually a bit of a preview. The Greek word, the heart in the New Testament, is a different idiom. It's used completely differently. The Hebrews had this very limited idea of the mind. The entirety of your mind, as I mentioned earlier, was located in the lev, located in the heart. Your thoughts, your feelings, everything else, just right here. That's the only place it could be. Now, the Greeks kind of break things up and move them around your body a little bit more. And we're going to talk about some of the contrast and some of the overlap of those things as we go forward. But the idea behind this series and behind the concepts we're going to be looking at is looking at the idiom and metaphor and the poetry of the Bible and how the different approaches to it will give us a deeper understanding of God and his character and ultimately of us and how we are to shape our character to match his and how our principles, our values are to be aligned with his. I hope this lesson has been encouraging for you today, short as it was, and one that we can take and apply to our lives in a very direct and a useful way. And I hope it has piqued your curiosity for how we look at the scriptures. Next time you open up the Psalms and you're looking at one of the instances where the word for heart shows up there, when you see that lev show up in one of the 127 times it shows up in Psalms, you will know what that means a little bit better. Or, by the way, the second place in the Old Testament where there's the second most amount of mentions of the heart is Jeremiah, with not a close second at all. It's only 46. So it's less than half of the amount of times it shows up in Psalms. But as you read those places and you see that word show up, you can read it with a new perspective now and think of all of the multifaceted aspects of the heart as we approach those passages together. And if your heart tells you that you need to be obedient to the Lord today in baptism, or you need prayers for restoration or encouragement, indeed, if we can help you in any way, we'd invite you to come forward as we stand and sing.